What is going on, guys? Ryan Nelson here. Had a couple busy weeks, so I had to take a few weeks off of this, but we're back, and today we're going to be talking about action cameras. But more specifically, we're talking about a GoPro HERO7 Black, we're talking about the DJI Osmo Action, and because why not, we're talking about the Sony RX0 Mark II. So just to be upfront, the GoPro is my personal camera. I've been using it for a while, so I do know the ins and outs a little bit more than the other two cameras. That being said, the setup on all three of these cameras is pretty simple. One thing I did notice setting up the DJI is you can't just turn it on and get to playing with the camera. You can't turn it on, go out to shoot and start shooting. The DJI camera actually requires you to download the app on your phone and then register the camera through your phone through their app, and then you can actually start using the camera. I did find this to be actually kind of obnoxious because I just wanted to turn the camera on, play with it, see what it can do. I had to have a few more steps there. So if you're buying this for Christmas or a birthday present, just be aware of that. You can't just pull it right out of the box and start using it. As to where the GoPro and the Sony, you can just pull them out of the box, charge your battery, and be on your way. That being said, after getting this set up through the app, the DJI I actually thought was the most user-friendly with the interface and the easiest to kind of navigate the menus and make sure you're getting where you want, when you want. Switching from photo mode to video mode, slow motion mode, changing your frame rate, going from 4K to 1080. It's pretty self-explanatory and pretty easy on the DJI. It is still pretty easy on the GoPro. Sometimes I just have trouble getting that menu to open or actually just finding where that setting is. Now, setting up the Sony is a little bit trickier. Now, if you're familiar with the A7 series Sony cameras and their menu systems, good news for you because the RX0 Mark II does have the same menu systems as the A7 series. Personally, I think it's a little much for this tiny little camera. It's got a tiny screen. If you don't have great eyesight, you might actually have trouble seeing this menu because the menu system displays really small on this camera, and if you're not familiar with it, it can be very intimidating. Luckily, I've had some very recent and previous experience with this menu system, so I was already semi-familiar with it. But there is a lot going on in this menu, so be aware of that. Now, first use with these cameras, on the Sony, the one thing that stands out right away is the flip screen. The screen does pop out, it goes straight down, comes up, or flips straight back towards you. So that little flip screen is nice, and this thing feels like a little brick. It feels pretty solid. The glass on the front of this is not recessed, so I feel like it might get scratched pretty easily. But that being said, it does feel like a brick. And if you wanted a little travel vlogging camera, it has a mic input, so you can hook this up with a Rode Wireless Go, a Rode Video Micro, to have just a tiny little vlogging setup. Put a little handle on that, you're pretty inconspicuous. Lightweight, you're not carrying around a big DSLR with a big lens on it. This is pretty cool. And then moving on to the DJI. So the DJI does not have a flip screen, but it does have a reversible screen. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but it has the screen on the front. You can hit a button, switch from the back screen to the front screen so you can see yourself doing selfies, videos, vlogging, whatever you want to do. You can see that on the front, which the GoPro does not have. It's a big downside of the GoPro if you want to do it for self-recording or selfies, vlogging, anything like that. GoPro does not have it. You can do it with Sony, you can do it with the DJI. DJI. That gets hard to say after a long time. DJI. Dji. I'm just gonna call it the Dji. No, DJI. This is roughly about the same size as the GoPro. It's a little bit shorter, a little bit longer, but it's got a really nice big screen on the back of this. I do enjoy this screen over the GoPro screen. And like I mentioned earlier, getting through the menus on this is pretty intuitive. It's pretty easy, pretty self-explanatory. So I do like this camera a lot. Now, using the DJI over the GoPro, I do like the DJI. It turns on a little bit faster, turns off a little bit faster. Just the usability of the DJI is a little bit more intuitive overall than the GoPro. So now that that's covered, let's get into the actual quality of using each three of these cameras. Now, just to try to keep this consistent, these were all shot at 4K 24, a 5500 Kelvin white balance. The GoPro was set to a flat color and a medium sharpness. The DJI was set to D-Cine-like, And then the Sony was set to picture profile 7, which is S-Log 2. And the stabilization was turned on for all 3 of these cameras. So I did a walking test and then I did a running test. So let's take a look at the walking test of all 3 of these. These are all straight out of camera, ungraded images. You can tell the DJI and the GoPro are pretty well stabilized. The Sony still bounces around quite a bit. Not sure how well this stabilization is working in this camera, but I can assure you it is turned on. Taking a look at the color of all of these raw out of camera, I'd say the GoPro definitely has the edge. It has a lot more pop. But now let's give these a quick grade, take a look at these, see how they compare, and then we're gonna take a look at the running version of both of these. Okay, I assure you the stabilization in the Sony camera is on. After a quick color grading, the DJI and the GoPro really kind of actually match. They look very similar. As to where the ungraded version, the DJI was really contrasty, almost a little bit muddy, but you can bring all of that detail back out. As a graded version, I think either of these cameras are really close to each other. But the Sony, however, is still gonna need a lot more work in the color grading department. For whatever reason, I can't quite put my finger on it, but I am tending more towards the DJI as being the smoother camera. But they're both pretty smooth for just holding these in my hand, looking behind me and running. While I did the shot, I also wanted to freeze frame on one of these and zoom in and just kind of see what the quality, what sharpness, what clarity we're getting on these images. So if I just take one of these still shots before we started moving and zoom in on the shirt, with the Sony, you can tell this is a really clear camera, really clear lens. You're actually still seeing some of that fabric, the striping in the shirt. And then when you switch over to the DJI, it's actually kind of grainy. It's a little pixelated. And then going to the GoPro, looking at this, it's a little bit smoother than the DJI, but not nearly as clear as the Sony. That being said, we're at 400% at this point, so all 3 of these look pretty good as an overall. And then I thought this shot was actually a really good representation of dynamic range for all 3 of these cameras. So taking a look at the highlights, with the Sony, I'm not really seeing that really nice roll off from the highlights to the midtones that you're used to seeing with, say, like an A7 series camera. That being said, it does seem to be holding a little bit more detail in the shadows over the GoPro or the DJI. Now, the DJI and the GoPro, again, seem to be very similar with what I'm getting out of this graded image. If I open up my Lumetri scopes, take a look at all 3 of these raw out of camera, we're not losing any shadows, we're not losing any highlights. The DJI does seem to underexpose a little bit more than the other 2, but that's okay as long as we're not getting noise in the shadows, which I don't appear to be getting too much noise. This is also a really bright sunny day, so not exactly a low light test. So overall, between the DJI and the GoPro, pretty similar results, similar cameras, similar bodies, similar sizes. Similar is what I'm saying. These 2 cameras are very similar. Now I'm gonna drop some links down in the description for all 3 of these cameras. Go ahead and check those out. Buy one if you want, try it out. Let me know what you think. So if you're gonna be using any of these cameras or any camera in general out in the bright sunlight, I highly recommend looking into ND filters, neutral density filters. Now, I'll drop a link down below in the description to Amazon for ND filters for each of these cameras. Try to find one for your camera if you can. Really helps bring that motion blur back into really bright sunny days. That's all I'm gonna say on that, but check it out. So I know what I've covered today only scratches the surface of the differences and similarities in all 3 of these cameras. There's a lot more to these cameras, so if you have any more questions, let me know. Put that down in the comments. So maybe I'll be able to answer your question for you. Hopefully I can, maybe not. I'll do my best. Anyway, to wrap this up, for the price point of the GoPro and the DJI, I think they're both great cameras. They're both gonna give you really good results. I think the DJI right now is a little bit cheaper than the GoPro. With that front screen on there, I love the way this thing feels. I love the way it looks. It's easy to use. The functionality is great. And the quality is really comparable to the GoPro. So overall, if it was my money right now, I'd probably put it towards the DJI, unless of course you want to do some hyperlapse stuff, which the GoPro does really well. I didn't get a chance to test that out with the DJI. Maybe I'll get that tested before I have to send it back. We'll see if I have time. Sony's pretty good too. It's a lot more expensive for what you're getting. So tell you what, if you guys find this video useful, do me a big favor, hit that thumbs up button down there, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, leave me a comment, ask me questions, try to answer them for you the best I can, and I will see you guys next time.